everybody. I'd like to point out before we get started that that was not a breathing sound effect. That was my actual breathing, because it's impossible, pretty difficult to breathe in this thing. I don't know how David Prowse did it 3 times, no less, but it's very difficult. Anyway, now I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Always have been, always will be. So I'm here to talk to you about Star Wars. Specifically, the prophecy spoken of in the prequels. Get to those some other time. But the prophecy spoken of speaks of a chosen one. Now, all throughout the prequels, or most of the prequel-based media that we got, it was implied that Anakin Skywalker, aka eventually Darth Vader, was the chosen one. Now, some could argue that this is not true and that Luke, or even Luke and Leia, are in fact the chosen ones. I, on the other hand, have some ideas on this. So let's get started. Now, I'm going to start out by talking about what I believe to be the true nature of the Force. The Force. Now, the way I see it, the Force is a living, sentient creature. Or, well, maybe not a creature or sentient or living as we perceive it, but it is aware, and it knows itself, and it knows the galaxy in which it is meant to guard and keep balance and order within, which is, of course, the galaxy far, far away. The way I see it, the Force is an amalgamation of God, Chi, Buddhism, all that religious, mystical, spiritual stuff that we all either believe or follow in some manner and way in our day-to-day lives, those of us that do. And it comes together to be this one great, all-powerful force. And I believe that the Force will do whatever it takes to keep balance and order. I also believe that there are 2 things that it uses, specifically fate and destiny. Now, destiny, as far as I'm concerned, is that thing in your life that you can't escape, that you are meant to do regardless of whether you want to or not. That, for Anakin, as the chosen one, specifically means he has to bring balance to the Force. Fate, on the other hand, is that portion of your life that you do have control over and that you can control as you see fit. And that means that it doesn't matter how Anakin brings balance to the Force, just that he does. And the Force that's all the Force cares about. And it's why it brought Anakin into the world, as I believe the Force to literally, I take this portion very literally, he had no father as we understand it, but I don't buy into the whole Palpatine and, as Sidious and Plagueis creating him using controlling the midichlorians, but rather that Anakin literally was created by the Force itself as an act to bring balance. Or if we have to believe that Palpatine and Plagueis were somehow responsible, let us believe that they only did so because the Force influenced them to do so. Now, let us move on. The prophecy. Okay, now let's move into the prophecy itself. Now, if we go into the canon piece if we look at Wikipedia, the official Star Wars wiki, all it states is that the Force, the prophecy is that there's a chosen one who will bring balance to the Force. And again, we believe that this chosen one to be Anakin Skywalker. I do, at least. And as did the Jedi, Now, it also states in that particular article on Wikipedia that Anakin only brought balance to the Force after turning back to the so-called light side and killing Palpatine. I believe this to be false, incorrect, completely wrong. Now, looking at it from my point of view, as it were, again, many points of view, one of the many facets of Star Wars. Now, if you were to, and I see the Force as not a light or dark side thing. I believe it has certain properties that do lean towards a more light or dark side, but they don't necessarily mean those two things specifically exist. I believe that the Force is one massive thing that just doesn't have to be distinguished that way. I see it as more of a gray area, which is why I am what is called a gray Jedi. If you don't know what that is, please look it up. Anyway, the point is, the way I see it, the nature of the prophecy and the nature of the Force and the nature of the Chosen One, a little bit more complicated than that, in that the way I see it, now we have to look at the Jedi for this. Now the Jedi are at least 1,000 years old, because we know that the Republic as it stood at the time of its destruction was about 1,000 years old, at, again, the very end of the Clone Wars. Now, looking at it this way, what we can discern from that the Jedi are at least that old, probably, if not definitely, older, a little bit older, and that they have been tied to the Republic for maybe just as long as that, if not, again, longer, or the facets of what would be the Republic beginning 1,000 years ago. Now, that being the case, it's clear that by the time the Jedi meet their destruction at the hands of Order 66, that they've become somewhat arrogant, maybe even a little corrupt, maybe just they can't seem to discern things. They can't even tell that Palpatine is the Sith Lord they've been looking for. He hides it so well, and they just can't seem to get through the darkness, as it were, to see clearly. Now, again, just because I believe that the Force itself is a gray area doesn't mean that there isn't some facet of darkness and light there that can cloud the judgment of one or either side, depending on their, again, points of view, as it were. Because, again, differing points of view are what truly separate the Jedi and the Sith. Nothing more, nothing less, as far as I'm concerned. Now, this being the case, I believe that the prophecy pertains less to destroying the Sith, but truly to getting rid of all facets that would corrupt the Force. And I believe that includes both the Jedi and the Sith. What this means, as it were, is that I'm essentially implying that by turning to the dark side, however temporarily, for over 2 decades, that Anakin Skywalker was Darth Vader, by eliminating whatever remaining corrupted Jedi who, as it were, had fallen out of true counsel with the Force, therefore has, by eliminating most of them, he, in a sense, he cleansed that portion of the Force, and only by killing Palpatine and then dying himself did he truly bring balance to the Force. So by killing most of the Jedi and then killing Palpatine and dying himself, he brought the balance, as it were, or as close to balance. It was then left to Luke and maybe Leia. Again, I won't entirely know until I see Force Awakens, but essentially, it essentially means that it leaves them to do the work needed to build up the Force again to its proper state, or not, again, depending on the film. But this is what I believe, that essentially this is how Anakin truly brought balance to the Force, in a manner of speaking, as it were. And again, it didn't matter how he did it. This is just the method that he ended up going with unknowingly to complete and fulfill his destiny. So, those are my whole thoughts on the subject of it, and I hope you enjoyed this. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell me what you think of the new intro. I wanted to say something about that, but tell me what you think of the intro, and hope you like that as well. Good day, and I'll be talking about Star Wars for a while now, so bye.